You know, haven't you gotten the word about cigarettes? And I want to say the reason why we've gotten the word was there was a tax on cigarettes to do education about cigarettes. A 25-cent tax on every pack of cigarettes in the state of California that allowed, that's what paid for a lot of my job at the county office, to do education around it. And as we did education and legislation and did a bunch of things around it, our norm around tobacco changed. Now, if we were here 20, 25 years ago, we'd have ashtrays along here and people would be lighting up cigarettes. I mean, there were smoking areas I was at Albany High. There was a smoking area for kids, and there was a smoking area for teachers. You forget how much of it was not unusual to smoke on an airplane. Yeah. You know, I don't know if you've seen this one Mad Men that's been out on HBO. I'm just renting it as video. But part of it is, here's a doctor, 1960, sitting in the office after just doing examination with a patient, takes out a pack of Pall Mall, lights up and offers it to the patient. You know, that's how much of a change. That and the whole thing around women is really, yeah. All right. Oh, the woman can be pregnant. Right. Don't make it different. Right. But our awareness around cigarettes has changed. What I'm challenging you with is, number one, our awareness around alcohol is very low. We don't really see it the way... what does alcohol have to do with sports? Would somebody run that? Because I don't really get it. However, the media has linked alcohol and sports together. Alcohol is integrated into our society, and it's the alcohol companies that say, oh, listen, you don't have to tax us on the education. We'll help you. Because we don't want people to drink and drive. So we just want people to drink responsibly, okay? And so there's a way in which there's no tax on alcohol to do education. If the marijuana gets on the ballot in November, I hope that there will be a tax on it, not just to help bail out California, but to have a tax on it to be able to do some education around marijuana, because our understanding around marijuana is also very low. So I want to do a little bit of teaching around marijuana, if I can, here. And I'm going to stay away from the PowerPoint for a minute and just do it here, because sometimes it's more effective here. First of all, the drug. The drug is delta-9, tetra, hydro, cannabinol. You can smoke alfalfa all day long. It's not going to get you high. The reason why marijuana gets you high is it has this drug in it. And the drug has to be released, if you remember your high school chemistry, through heat. Delta stands for heat. So you can't just eat marijuana. It won't do anything. You either have to cook it or burn it in order to release the marijuana. So people can cook it and put it in butter and then put it in a brownie or a cookie or whatever, or burn it and inhale the smoke, okay? Now, years back, when hippies smoked marijuana, now this is the active ingredient, right? So it's kind of like what's in alcohol. If you have 3% alcohol or 9% alcohol, if you're having Bacardi rum, you might have 50% alcohol. It depends on how much alcohol is in the substance. That's the intoxicant. The intoxicant here is this, better known as THC. 1964, 1965, and the other reason, by the way, why I've become very popular in this area is Northern California has become one of the center spots for marijuana throughout the country. It has become as fine a horticultural thing here as wine has, okay? And so some of the finest marijuana that can be grown in the world is grown in your own backyard right here. And don't you know that the kids know it, but people all over the country know it. We are living in a very special area right here. The way it started, hippies. 64, 65, they really introduced it to this country. It wasn't part of my high school experience anyway. But 64, 65, hippies started to smoke marijuana. They smoked 1 to 3% THC marijuana, okay? And it worked. Hippies got high in Haight-Ashbury, I guarantee you, okay? What happened was things began to develop. First thing that developed was Vietnam War. A lot of people went to Vietnam. I know I was one of them in Vietnam. And in Vietnam, if people who smoked marijuana in Vietnam, it knocked their socks off. They smoked it in the States, and knew that it got them high. They smoked it in Vietnam, in Saigon, and it was 5 to 10% THC. And if you do the math for a second, and this is 2% and this is 8%, this was 4 times stronger than this marijuana. It's no wonder it knocked people's socks off. The reason was they're both cannabis, but this was cannabis sativa and this was cannabis indica. This came from Mexico. This came from the Golden Triangle of Laos, Burma, and Thailand. Different strain of marijuana, much more potent. So what happened was, they thought, man, if we bring this back to the States, we'll be able to make big bucks. And that's exactly what they did. And the first step back from Vietnam was California. A lot of people just took the seeds out of their pockets, put it in the ground, started to grow this marijuana, and marijuana changed. 1971, 1972, this sold for $5 an ounce. They didn't even call it an ounce, they called it a lid back then. They'd fill up a sandwich baggie, okay? When they started to sell this, it sold for $5 to $10 a gram. From $5 to $10 an ounce to $5 to $10 a gram. Marijuana stopped being a hippie thing and became big business. And it has never stopped being big business in the state of California. It is the largest cash crop that's coming out of California by a long shot. It is a huge amount of money that we're talking about here. From here, then just people then the competition just really started to grow. They learned that if you grow the male plant and the female plant when it first comes out of the ground, you take the male plant and you throw it away. So the female plant grows by itself. If it grows by itself without a male plant around, the female plant doesn't get fertilized. And if it doesn't get fertilized by a male plant, then the potency of the plant, instead of going into the seed, goes into the bud. And say grow just female plants, just take the buds, that bumped this up to 10 to 15% THC. And we're not done yet. We're not into the 2000s where most of marijuana today is grown indoors, not outdoors. You get 3 growing seasons instead of 1. You get seeds from Amsterdam, a Namibian, Afghani, hybrid, indica, sativa seed. It costs anywhere from $5 to $50 a seed. You grow it indoors. You set up hydroponic trays and grow lights in a room like this. Is not uncommon to have that happen. It costs about $500 to grow 1 marijuana plant indoors. That plant yields $5,000. And then because they know, now most people here, some people are younger than others, how many people here know what purple is? There we go. Yeah. Purple. It's a high-grade marijuana. What it really came from was Humboldt County because it got cold. Just like a grape, when it gets cold, turns purple, or leaves turn purple in the fall. So the growers just put air conditioning in there because it's a cellar. Every kid, you say that in high school, and there is not one kid in those classes that won't raise their hand. I was in a middle school. Over the hill on the other side, a sweet little middle school, and almost every kid knew what purple was. It's like there's a whole thing going on here. So it's a selling point. So they put air conditioning in there to make it turn purple. However it stands, it is not uncommon in Northern California to have 15 to 20% THC. As a matter of fact, this is the most common. This is what could be referred to as purple. And this here is relatively cheap. If you were in North Carolina or Chicago or Texas, you would be paying big bucks for this. Here, it's cheap and available, and it is the milieu that the kids swim in once they get into high school. This is part of the scene. Yeah?
Quick question. The addictive thing that, years ago people said, oh, it's not addictive. Was that because it was the 1 to 3%?
Yeah, so, I mean, years back, we used to think that cocaine was a non-addictive drug. You laugh now, but the way it really started to get addictive was when we learned how to freebase it, so you could really get a lot of the impurities out. Then you started to, well, that's what crack is really freebase cocaine, and then all of a sudden they realized it's addictive. But yes, part of it is the purity of it that makes it that way. But if it releases that dopamine, that's the key to it. So, take the drug, THC, bring it into the brain.